And welcome to this edition of Profiles and Perspectives with Darswell Rogers. I'm very pleased to be on the phone with Reverend Dr. Odell Montgomery Cooper. She is finishing up a 3-week. I'm going to let you decide how you are going to characterize this, but you've been in Italy studying at the Vatican, and this is the third year in a row that you've had this opportunity to go over there. And what's notable about my deciding to have this conversation with her is that I went in the Vatican decades ago. And as I was walking through the basement of the Vatican, I was following three nuns who, when you get to each one of these rooms, was describing who was there. There were popes there and a number of other images, and they got to this one room, and I was trailing them. They gasped, and then they started doing Hail Marys, and I peered into the room afterwards, and there was the Black Madonna, and it was the first time that I had ever seen Mary portrayed as a Black woman. And so when I told Dr. Cooper about this, she confirmed for me when she went to the basement of the Vatican. But first off, Dr. Cooper, thanks for joining. And I thought that it would be really interesting to share with my folks your perspective on your experience in Italy, your experience at the Vatican.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back on your show. I don't remember what age I was. I was a young girl when you told me that story. And it never left. You kept talking about it year after year, year after year. The Vatican's got these pictures in the Vatican, and they're just locked up and nobody could see them. But you told me that story as a child, and I still remembered it. What I'm doing now here at the Vatican is in Rome, not the Vatican. We are studying interreligious dialogues, and it's by the Franciscan priests who are running this program. And the program is for 3 weeks on interreligious dialogue, and it's talking about how the Vatican has unleashed all their cardinals and fathers and teams to go out to have dialogue with every religion in the world and to say, don't we know, we apologize if we ever hurt you, but we're not the ones that did it. So let's try to find out who you are as a religion, your faith practice, your belief, and for you to understand who we are. And let's get into dialogue to see how we can work together and what do we have in common. So this is because they call the Vatican II document. So this is the teachings of all the training, conversations, and dialogue they've had with religions throughout the world. And of course, there are three religions that they refuse to talk to them, but they're just sharing for us what the challenges have been in dialoguing and those experiences. So this is what we're learning, and the class is filled with students from all over the world.
I hear you say that there were a couple of religions that did not want to dialogue with the Vatican.
Absolutely. The Mormons um, said nope, and they're really not considered a religion. And Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah Witnesses.
Okay. And when you say interreligious, so obviously you're literally talking about other religions, but are they also including other uh, within the Christian community? Because I guess okay. So within this context, Christianity is not unilaterally considered a religion. You're looking at each segment of Christianity, and then you're looking at Islam, you're looking at Buddhism, you're looking at Hinduism. So it's that level of spectrum. And what's notable, uh, Dr. Cooper, is that a lot of folks might presume that if you're over there with the Vatican, that you're Catholic, but you're not.
No, I'm not Catholic. A lot of people have said, oh, how can you go and support this religion? that has done so many mean things, that the history of abusing people. And every religion, every culture, every sect, more or less, has their skeletons. And no, I do not support that. But we have it also in our religion as well. But I'm here for the interreligious dialogue to figure out what do we have in common. And if we're Christians, then Christianity stemmed from Catholicism. So I am learning so much about the beginning, first century, second century. When I'm in seminary school, I don't remember going back that far. I just remember 19th, 20th century. But to be in the classroom and to have professors talk to you about first century and then before BCE, it's just been amazing. That's my word. Amazing, enlightening. So this is my second year. So this year there's 10 students. I'm sorry, there are 14 students. They're from Canada, London, Australia, and Philippines. We're from the America. We're from America, and the Netherlands. A young lady who's from the Netherlands. Just to hear their culture and their faith and their lens at their age and their perspective in life has been just amazing.
Well, I can speak to the fact, and let me note that I didn't say this at the beginning, but Dr.
Did
Cooper
you
is
hear me? Did I freeze?
no, I can hear you fine. I hear you fine. You can hear me?
Okay.
Okay. This is the challenge when where we do these Zooms, but she's over in Rome. I did not share that a little bit of history. That's
No, you're frozen now.
okay. Well, I'm not sure what's going on. Hopefully it'll clear up. I can make my point, hopefully successfully, and then you can catch up with me. The is that Dr. Cooper is my cousin, and that also that my path into seminary I can also thank Dr. Cooper for. It was actually 2 years ago this month that we were at a family reunion and we were sitting around talking instead of going to some family event, and she was explaining to me that because she's a professor at Grace Theological Seminary, that she was teaching a course on biblical criticisms. And I found the course so fascinating in terms of her explanation that I said, well, can I take the course? And so she had to go to the rector, the bishop, and seek permission for me to take the course. And so they agreed to let me take the course. And then the next thing I know, I'm fully enrolled in seminary. And last month was ordained and received my master's degree. So there's a lot of thanks that I can offer up to
Yes,
Dr.
and you are the
Cooper,
Reverend Darrell.
the Reverend Darswell Rogers. So how about that? I mean, you never know where the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, will lead you, because I simply had an interest in one course and really found a calling. So uh, share more about your entire experience in the Vatican. I mean, what has that been like? I haven't been there. I've been there twice myself. What's that experience been like?
Coming to the Vatican, um, when I first came in October of 2022, the bishop of the school, Bishop Linda, asked me to come and be a presenter for her faculty to talk about interruptions, talk
Well,
about trauma.
okay.
And she said, we have space booked out for you to have this come. Huh?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I realized when you mentioned
You're frozen. So I
interruptions.
don't know what you want me to do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Go ahead and tell the story.
Okay. Um, I, okay. So I came in October of 2022 to do a book talk at the Vatican, and it was just life changing in October. And to little old me from Boston having a book talk conversation with faculty about generational trauma, standing in the Vatican Library. We're in the courtyard because we were still in the pandemic, so we still had many restrictions. And the Holy Spirit just came upon me and gave me permission and orders in terms of what to do. And I just was just flabbergasted that this was going to be my call. And while we were here in October, the bishop asked me if I wanted to come to school and study in Rome for the summer. And of course, I got excuses. I don't have any money. I've never been away from 3 weeks in another country. I can give you all the no's, health reasons, financial. And later that evening, she said, I spoke to my board and we're prepared to give you scholarship. All you're gonna need to do is your own money for while you're here. So I had from October to June to get ready. And at this point, how can you say no to that?
Absolutely.
So I accepted it. I said yes. So she really wanted to know, how can I help you with generational trauma moving forward? How can we help you? It was then she also mentioned, you need to get your doctor's degree. And I'm like, I don't have any money. I'm going back to the same excuses of why I can't do something. And she just said, stop. We're going to use your book and your workbook as your dissertation. And this work, I want to give you a scholarship so this can validate you. The world can see you. You can go places that just being Reverend Odell Cooper is not going to open doors for you. She says, you've got something and let me help you get there. I had never heard that, never seen that before. And here we are standing in Piazza Navona having this conversation about going to the school in the summer, and she wanted to help me. So she offered me the scholarship to come study and to enroll and get my doctorate's degree. And I couldn't think of any other excuses, so I said yes. So came last year, I'm here this year, and experiences is still wonderful. But being in the Vatican this year was more enlightening. So there's this excavation that has taken place, and the excavation has taken place where they were looking for St. Peter's tomb. And during this excavation, they're digging, they find it, and they find where they believe are St. Peter's bones. And you have to go down 3 levels. The basilica is this level. There's another community below it, and you got to go below that level of excavation to get to where you see St. Peter's bones. And it's narrow. You can see the different bricks from this century, 4th century, and just the 16th century bricks, the brick layer, the places, it's an amazing journey. And when we get there, we see from the crack, there goes, we know Peter's bones. And like they have to say with everything, do we know? We don't really know anything. But based on DNA, based on what this person was wearing at the time, his body, his bones, his age, and where it was located, they say it's Peter. And just to be in that space. So as I'm walking out, we're walking through the end of the excavation, and nobody says a thing. And I look into this room, and there on the wall is the Black Madonna. And all I could do is think about you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Okay. All I can do is think about you and the stories, the families. The Vatican has this Black Madonna hidden in the basement. That's all I could do was hear you. I've been hearing you talk about this since I was a young girl. And here I am, 62, and I'm looking at the Black Madonna. And I just stood there frozen with a big smile on my face. And I went looking for my phone and knew that you was the first person I was going to call. And It's not oil painting, it's a painting, and she's a black woman. And people are like, yeah, they're Middle Eastern. Why would you think she would not look like that? And I'm looking like, oh, America's the ones that has it wrong. They knew all along what she looked like. And when I waited, we got up, we came out, I got reception, I found a seat sitting outside the Vatican, and I called you. And all I can say is I saw her.
It's it's
You're the first person. I
it's
saw
it's
her.
it's pretty awesome, and I think without a doubt it's the most memorable part of my trip to Rome. And I was 23, 24, something like that, when I went over there. So yeah, it's been 40 years since that's a 40-year-old memory for me. We're talking to Reverend Dr. Odell Montgomery Cooper. She is over at the Vatican studying for the summer. And you mentioned the fact that on your first trip over, you went over on a book talk, and so we failed to mention your book. You've got a book called Interruptions Disrupting the Silence, and I think it's worth, because you talked about generational trauma. I think that it's worth us backtracking here at this point and talking a little bit about that story, which has led you to where you are today, and your book.
So the story of Interruptions is 7 years ago. Lost my son to gun violence, murdered by mistaken identity, and me not understanding my body and what symptoms were. I suffered a brain aneurysm. I ignored all the symptoms and signs that something was wrong and just kept going, kept believing the myths and stigmas of being a strong Black woman. God is with you. If it happened, it's God's will. All the cliches that I was hearing to me in my Christian faith wasn't helping me to heal. I had a brain aneurysm on my son's birthday, and I went from being angry to God to bargaining for God for my life because I wanted to live. And doctors did not think I was going to live. They said, give her 3 days, give her a week. And here it is 7 years later, I am here. So I've been blessed to have people in my life who convinced me to tell my story through a play, through a book, and a workbook. So what I do now, I have a team of people who work with me that I have met over the years, the last 7 years, in helping me to teach interruptions to our community. We built a team and we train and work with congregations in the Greater New Haven area. That's where I have a grant that's been funded to me. So this is the work that we do, to go into the churches and talk, have dialogue. I'm learning the word dialogue about our faith, our trauma, our pain, our secrets. How can we be resilient? What is it that God really wants for our life? And is what we are believing helping us to heal? So we have these conversations about trauma and loss and grief, and people automatically start thinking, oh, well, I didn't lose a son, so I don't need to go through this. No, it's a traumatic loss of anything that has interrupted your flow of life, the way that you breathe and live. And what we talk about now is that we grieve our healthy self. I was grieving the functioning Odell who could get in the car, travel, and do what she wanted to do. Now, because of the brain aneurysm, I have health restrictions. So I was grieving the healthy Odell. So we grieve our relationships that are still alive, and we don't even think about it. We grieve ourselves. So we're talking about grief in a way that has been impacted by trauma and change. Um, in the last 2 years, we've trained 14 congregations, mixed congregations, Black, white, and I am, so we've been doing that for 2 years. And
When you came back to Rome last year, what is it? Repeat that for me.
when I came back to Rome last year, people kept telling me, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. And I'm like, I'm not writing book. I'm done. I already wrote a book. I'm not writing another book. And as I'm sitting here in Rome, all I had to do, Darswell, is walk down the street past St. Peter's Basilica every day for 3 weeks, and I would just sit and talk to God. And it's like, what do you want? You got me back here. You must want something. And I would sit and pray. And the message was, yes, you're going to write your second book. The book is going to be called Without Walls, a letter to your son. So that's what I'm writing now. I'm back in Rome and I'm in a community this time, not in a tourist area, and still going back to the Vatican, still going to school, but I'm writing this letter about the 14 churches that came through the Let's Talk training program. And the people have told me their stories of going through it, how it has impacted their lives, and the changes that they've made, understanding faith, God, mental health, and what does emotional wellness look like. So one of the things that we talked about in class last week was people can sit on the same pew and have a different perspective of God, a different understanding of the scripture. Imagine having a family living in the same house and have a different perspective, a different language of who God is, your relationship with God, and how we're supposed to heal. And this year, there's a new word that came out, and they're talking about the truth. And I'm like, well, what do you all mean, the truth? And they're like, because people have asked, does God change? That's been a dialogue that has come up in the interruptions class.
Does God change?
And how do you have this dialogue? So I ask the tough questions while I'm here. And they go, no, God doesn't change. God is truth. God is love. It doesn't change. We change. How we look at God, our perspective changes. But the truth and love never changes. So God does not change. We change.
That's
and
powerful.
it's just our perspective of how we look at God.
That's
That
powerful.
was just, that's powerful. And they said, God is truth. And they said, if the Catholic Church had this perception that we're the only ones that know the truth about God, then if they talk to someone who's Buddhist, you don't have the truth because we own the truth. So the whole purpose of this dialogue is the understanding that nobody has a handle on the truth. So one of the facilitators says, if you think you know God and you got a handle on God, I don't know what you're holding on to, but it's not. Because God is just that big that if you got a handle on what it's not, it's your truth, but don't let it stop you from growing and changing and seeing God and letting somebody else expose you to their understanding of God. So we don't own the truth. I don't own the truth. It's just my Baptist truth. This is my Baptist lens of looking at God.
And so there you have it. Be you Roman Catholic, be you liberal Catholic, be you Baptist, be you Lutheran or Methodist, there's no ownership there. If I were to say it, there's no ownership, but there's perspective and there's a relationship. But let's face it, God is not knowable. It's not. It's not. There's no capacity to know in a fully holistic way. Is that fundamentally the point you're making?
That is exactly. God is big. I mean, God serves all of us, all these religions. So who's got it right?
Fascinating.
Who's got it right? We have what we have, and we believe what we believe, and that's what keeps us going.
So we're talking to Reverend Dr. Odell Montgomery Cooper. She is a professor at Grace Theological Seminary. She is spending just about to finish her second stint as a student at the Vatican. in her third trip over there studying. And let me just ask, as we kind of wind this conversation down, what additional perspectives or thoughts you have? This could be about just Italy. What's Italy been like? What's Rome been like? What other spiritual perspectives have you brought? So just kind of open this up for you to, if you will, freestyle here for a little bit.
Okay, I can freestyle for you. So first, I have I am relaxing the pressure of how to serve and worship God. Fear God, obey God, or you're gonna go to hell. Look at your mother wrong. Look at her, you're gonna go to hell. We put so much pressure on an individual to worship God that we forget that God is love. I'm no longer, make no mistake, I fear God, but I don't want to be in a relationship where I can't talk, express, share my emotions, my pain, my joy, be in dialogue with God and listen. Um, and it's respectfully. I'm just releasing all the pressures that's been put on us, been put on me. I'll say me. I'm in America going through my journey of how to worship God. I am not afraid of God. God is not a white man in the sky with a beard that I can't talk to. That's not who God is. That's not what God wants from us. It's a relationship. And someone said to me here, I said, well, help me to understand, when did this language of transition came from? And the priest said, slavery for you all. He said the white man needed to let you all know that God was a white man and be afraid of him, don't question him. And if you're a slave, because it's God's will. If you're poor, it's God's will. If you're in this relationship, it's God's will. And they needed you to be afraid. And this generational language has transferred down generation, until that's not who God is. And you're looking at pictures of the disciples, and they're not blonde and blue eyes. They're from Middle Eastern, and this is what they look like. So we have so many hangups that are crippling us in our faith that I'm releasing myself of, because I'm no longer letting art that's meant for me to be fearful of God, or to look at the disciples or Jesus as this image. That's not who the image is. The other piece that I'm enjoying is I'm living in a community. I haven't lived in a community since I was in Boston. I can go to the corner, I can see Armando, get some fresh peaches, some vegetables, some herbs. I can go every morning on my way to class. I stop at the bakery at the corner. I have my cappuccino at the counter. They know what kind of croissant I like. I give them €3. I drink my coffee, eat my croissant at the counter or sitting in a chair, and then I catch the train and go to school. So it's helping me to slow down and to breathe and to realize that it's communal. People are walking their dogs, they're talking, they're selling their clothes, their wares. And I haven't been in a place like this in a long time. In the States, we're drive through, eating in our car, drinking in our car. We go, go, go. I'm learning to breathe and enjoying the community
Wow.
of people and talking to people and trying to figure out a language. And I'm learning to breathe.
Awesome. So, Reverend Dr. Odell Montgomery Cooper, thanks this morning for sharing some of this. I want to emphasize again your book, Interruptions Disrupting the Silence. That's available on Amazon. You just
It's
recently
on
did audio.
Amazon, and
Go ahead.
yes, I turned it into an audio book. It will be released at the end of July, as soon as I can get home and listen to it and improve it. So the audio book will be available as I'm writing the second book, Without Walls, a letter to my son, to share the stories of the 14 congregations from the greater New Haven area that have gone through the training program. And they're sharing their highs and their lows. And their pastors have come back and said thank you. People have come back to say thank you. I didn't know that God had given me this healing ministry. And I want to make it clear, I'm not the one that lays hands on you to heal you. The ministry itself and your active participation and wanting to address your pain and trauma and have emotional wellness is what's healing.
Awesome.
A partnership with God and self.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining me. Safe travels back to the States. And we've got a family reunion coming up in 2 weeks. So I will see you down in Bradenton, Florida in 2 weeks.
Yes, you will.
Take care. And for
bye-bye.
my audience, thanks so much. You listen to Profiles and Perspectives with Darswell Rogers.